I'm Emily Austin, and this is Plastic Addict Talks, a series of interviews that we're doing with creators from all over to see what they're up to and what we can expect from them next. Today, we're talking about Glasshouse, a dystopian fairy tale film from South Africa about a family taking shelter in the titular glasshouse from the shred, an airborne toxin that causes memory loss. Joining us to talk about the film is the co-writers of Glasshouse, Kelsey Egan, who also directed the film, and Emma Lungiswa De Wet, who also served as associate producer. Kelsey, Emma, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello. Thanks for having
Hi.
us.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here.
So first of all, congratulations on Glasshouse. I really loved it, and the critical reception has been really incredible. Can you just tell me a little bit about how this project came to be and also what it was like making this film during lockdown?
Kelsey and I have known each other and worked together on other people's projects before, and we've been looking for an opportunity to meld brains on something.
And we realized that there was an opportunity or a avenue to pitch some grounded sci-fi genre content.
I think we came up with about 10 concepts to pitch, sort of hoping that they'd go for one, and we got very lucky. They picked 3. They really believe in Kelsey as a director, and so this was an opportunity for her to direct all 3 on the slate, which I think was, really insightful and genius of them, because look what happens when you support women, Great stuff.
And even though Glasshouse as a concept was not inspired by the pandemic, we didn't even realize at the time how much it was affecting the material, or to the extent that it was, other than feeling isolated ourselves. Emma was like literally my lockdown family, with Greg, our producer, and our other co-writer on one of the projects. I was on my balcony every day writing with Emma on Zoom, just like this.
In terms of a little bit of where the idea itself came from, at the time there was an incentive to shoot it in the Eastern Cape, which is actually the part of the country that I hail from. And I remembered the location from growing up there, this incredible conservatory in the middle of a park. It's such a mystical old world space. It was really begging for a story. And so the location was the starting point, and everything really followed on from there, because it makes sense. It's a hermetically sealed space. What's the danger outside?
It was a really charmed process, and during COVID it was even more of a miracle that it got made. Even flying in the actress Jess Alexander, who played Bee. I mean, she's such a trooper. She's such an amazing force. This girl, she's brilliant. And I think we got her visa like the day the UK embassy was closing, and then got her back to London like a couple days before they changed the regulations for re-entering into the country. I mean, just like, it was like such a miracle we got her out. There's so many things about this shoot that were so charmed, and really thanks to Emma.
No, the fact that we got through this shoot without anyone getting COVID is an absolute miracle. So the conditions under which we shot it, we were allowed a maximum of 50 cast and crew on site. We had to have a COVID officer at all times. Time was so tight that if we'd had even one infection, I think we may not have made it.
And we bubbled so tightly, like we just didn't see anyone else. Like we were in this like really tight little bubble. So it was like quite a intimate claustrophobic experience of shooting. And it was so meta, because we're telling this intimate claustrophobic story, and we're mirroring all of this in real life.
I think it's interesting what you said, right? Like the obvious conclusion when you watch Glasshouse is to think this is parallel to COVID and the pandemic that we've been living through for the last year and a half or so. You've got these themes of isolation, you've got themes of the types of habits or rituals that you form in isolation so that you can protect your bubble, For me, it was this stuff about objective truth, and then people's various interpretations of that being something that drives people apart, that divides people. Was that something that you were setting out to talk about in the story?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wanted to speak to that. We're living this very terrifying, I find it super creepy, like post-truth era. We are consistently like reworking our personal narratives to serve us to cope, or sometimes damage ourselves more. Sometimes our personal narratives are harmful. Showing the decay of the narratives, or showing the unreliability of everyone's narratives over the course of the film was structurally something that we tried really hard to do, because we didn't want people to know at first, and then slowly you see the cracks start to show. sort of in the way we've been watching things unfold in the real world.
And that's where I think where some of the ritual stuff of identity being embodied through ritual of where that comes from, because ritual is basically, it's what we do to tell ourselves who we are. And so that was a really fun challenge when we were writing this, was to think, okay, what are the rituals we can invent here that forms a family culture that is cohesive and believable, and that will help them survive, and that will become true in time. And that's also why it's important for us to have Mother function as almost like a cult leader. Mother is a very easy person to believe, she's a natural authority figure. And so that was quite fun, was writing her as both a sort of an empathetic and maternal character, but we very much saw her as a cult leader.
And I mean, Adrian Pierce, who played Mother, is just such a force. She was such a pleasure to work with. But the whole cast, the rest of the cast are all so young, and they're such exceptional talents, and they came at it with such passion. We got really lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these themes that you deal with that are quite heavy and, in depth, you took a very nuanced approach, and the actors really carried that through. It was like impeccably done and really refreshing, because I think in this cultural context, people want to create perhaps like paper cutouts.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest compliments I could possibly get. So thank you. And because we worked so hard to do that. I feel like audiences are always very underestimated. There's no need to spoon feed. We wanted to drop everyone in the world and let everyone sort of see the relationship dynamics unfold, and then see the cracks.
It was also very important for us that the conflict of the film come from these very lived-in relationships. And obviously the shred is an external threat, but we are pretty tired of seeing dystopian or sci-fi films where it's like the conflict lies in their inherent vulnerability as women, and we weren't interested in doing that. Their vulnerabilities are emotional vulnerabilities to each other and to themselves and to the lies that they tell.
That was such a pleasure also directorially to deal with, because it's like we got to create a world where these women have no exposure to like societal convention or concept of taboo. So their desire or their impulses are completely unbridled and natural and shameless and unapologetic. We leaned into the idea of confinement with Victorian wardrobe, because the symbolism of Victorian wardrobe is like for women is completely impractical. But the irony being that the wardrobe that we chose was 100% practical for living in a really hot, steamy, humid glass house where you just like you want to throw on a shift every day and be done with it, right? And they don't have to worry about modesty in this world. Who cares?
Our wonderful costume designer, Catherine McIntosh, created such a beautiful world through wardrobe.
We had no money. And what she achieved with the wardrobe is absolutely remarkable. Like she's such a treasure.
You'd never know that it was so low budget.
I'm so glad you think that, but it's a credit to Catherine. It's a credit to Carrie von Lillenfeld, our production designer, who also just like pulls rabbits out of hats left, right, and center. He's such a genius. Across the board, like makeup as well, and prosthetics. That's Clinton Smith at Cosmesis, and our makeup HOD Annie they're just all exceptional. They're exceptional human beings, and they're such craftsmen and women, and it makes a big difference. It just makes a difference when you have such an exceptionally talented team.
Yeah, we got very lucky, but I would also say we did consciously write a small cast, single location script where we knew that most of the production value was going to come from the location itself.
Yeah.
If you are trying to do similar, that is definitely the way to go.
I mean, we were really lucky. We got to shoot on anamorphic lenses. That's where you get this sort of fairy tale feel and like the fall off on the edges, and this like almost like the reality itself is constantly shifting and feels like almost like you're looking through a more magical view of the world.
So I know you've mentioned you have 2 other stories that you've written together. First of all, when can we expect to see these movies? Because I'm so excited to watch them. And also, how similar, I guess, are they going to be?
I think you're in for a surprise.
Yeah.
I think each of the projects on the slate is really quite distinct. So the next film that we shoot, currently titled The Sows, Kelsey and I wrote together. But the final film, I script edited, but Kelsey wrote it with Fred Stradon, who is a very exciting South African author.
He's a wonderful, wonderful writer and a beautiful human being as well. They're very distinct projects, but there are some Easter eggs across them that we slipped in and nods to one another.
I mean, they are all female-led, and they're all sci-fi. I think that as much as Glasshouse had such a distinct look and feel, I think that the next project on the slate is going to feel as unusual, and I think it's going to be a surprise to people.
I think I would have been excited no matter what you said, but that sounds really awesome. I can't wait to see them.
And we're so excited to be able to share them.
But just in terms of sort of what's still to come, I think everyone can really keep their eyes out on what's coming out of South Africa in the next year or two. I'm very excited about it. I think there's such forward momentum in terms of these sort of smaller to medium budget, high concept, really like craftily executed, interesting little films.
Yeah, South Africa is definitely the place to watch right now for really cool genre movies. Thank you both so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, no, thanks for the great questions. And honestly, like we're just so grateful that people are seeing the movie and that it's resonating the way that we hoped.
Thank you for this conversation. Honestly, you are who we make movies for.
True.
Thank you for engaging. We really appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us for this episode of Plastic Addict Talks. See you next time.